And the coach of that side, Roy Masters. Well, Roy, with your background as a motivator in the period you were at Lidcombe, and of course with your journalistic background of more recent times, looking at the side, have you, perhaps a bit more scientifically than Ned, looked at how you might get this side to play on the paddock?
Well, they wouldn't need a coach for a start. And there were times when I was at Lidcombe Oval, I didn't think they needed a coach either, because we're a part of a spirit, part of a period that where it all came from within. This being named in this team is the greatest honour of my life, and I'm sure that it's the greatest honour of the lives of many of the other players that are here. I know you're going to interview me, but there are some things that I want to say.
And I wouldn't possibly stop you, so go right ahead. I will say, as a prelude to what you're about to say, Roy, in a chat just a little while ago, earlier this year, said that he thought his heart was always in the dressing room at Lidcombe Oval.
It is. And what I want to say is that when people ask me about Western Suburbs, and, you know, I reckon that there wouldn't be a couple of days go by without somebody saying, why don't you write a book about it? Now, I know that Gary Lester's written an outstanding book about the history of the club, but when I think about Western Suburbs, I don't think of all of those mythological things about 40 schooners at the Railway Hotel or Wackeye or some of the great tries that were scored. I really don't. What I think about...
So did you get the nickname Thirsty after West, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah.
What I think about, truthfully, are people like George Downey who, when players were injured, somebody had to take them up to the hospital. Somebody had to sit out in that bloody cold waiting room through that long night while that player was being cared for. Somebody had to drive the wives and children of those players, injured players, back home to Blacktown or wherever. And really, I think that spirit of voluntary labour that existed at that time was an enormous inspiration to us as players, coach, because it showed that there was some deep spirit within the club that today is represented by 25, 30 staff of people who are on reasonable incomes. Whereas in that time, it was volunteer labour, and the spirit of the club and the passion and love of that club was the most burning light of all.
I think it's a... From my first-hand experience, I think it's ideal that you pick out George as an example. He's here tonight, no greater worker for Western Suburbs, from rock concerts to welding fences to grandstands to you name it. And speaking of that rock concert, I mean, we had hundreds of people, and we did some catering at a function down at Brookvale Oval. We had another concert at Flemington Markets, and we had literally hundreds of people weigh in like that.
Yeah. And it's that spirit that I think that will see the club. I think we've still got another 30 or 40 years before we get the full change of what Ned referred to, that Super League, out of our system. But there's a day that, and this is not a politically correct thing to say, but there's a day that burns brightly in the hearts of anybody who has worn the black and white, that there will be a club that will be called in the NRL, and it'll be called the Magpies. And if money is to rule the world, which it seems to do, then why shouldn't the excellent people like Kevin Hammond exercise that power at some future time when we have to declare who is the franchise that takes this club and the NRL into the year 2010 and 11 and so on.
For a non-political comment, it wasn't bad.
Well, look, final thing that I want to say, and I did write this down. When you get as old and silly as me, you start to think about things in life, and I think about where is home. Is it a place where, you know, you were raised, or is it a place where you currently live and some log fire burns, or is it a place where you feel most comfortable? And I know in my heart that the place where I feel most comfortable is when I go to a West reunion and I stand around and I see the people and I just say to myself, you can just be who you are because you are in the company of great friends. And I see people like Chow Hayes and Les, and I know that intrinsically in my heart, and when you get to my age, you're allowed to say these simple but terribly sincere things, that here is your home, this is where you really intrinsically belong, here in this club. And that's deep within my heart what I feel. And finally, I want to say this, that when you go into a Western Suburbs reunion, don't ever think for one moment that we are this wild, mad band of bashing people, which to some extent we are. But we have people who back us, and we have people who think very sincere thoughts about us. And when you go to a Western Suburbs reunion, you are handed an invitation to enter. And on that invitation are the words of a poet. And the poet is William Butler Yeats. And he says the greatest words that apply to the Western Suburbs reunion and the people of Western Suburbs and those who played for it and those who belong to it and those who go to the reunions. And the words are, think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say, my glory was when I had such friends. Thanks.
Thank you, Laurie. The coach of Western Suburbs Team of the Century, Roy Masters. Could I also just say, in reciprocation to Roy's thoughts there about the club in general, we can remember back when we went through the doldrums for 89 years, and Roy came along, Bill Carson was president, but things started to happen, and we got results on the paddock, and as we said on the video, packed houses at Lidcombe Oval. It was real rough and tumble Western Suburb stuff, and I think it recharged our batteries, it got us going again. Even a few years later when the league put us out, going around getting petitions to have another rock concert at Lidcombe Oval and trying to get that through Auburn Council, for example. Little old ladies would come to the door who obviously never went to the football, but they knew what the score was, and they said waking up on a Monday morning, knowing that West had done okay or they'd won a game was just so important to them. And they knew who Roy Masters and the players and everybody was, and that spirit came through to them, and that's what the district's all about. But I think it's a phenomenal team. I don't think too many tries will be scored against them. I know that much about it anyway. But we'll be back in a little while with Mike Bailey, and also Michael run through that memorabilia once again. There's so many good things to souvenir from tonight, and of course from the painting, the prints, framed and unframed, and also many other good things as well. We've got a special jersey, they've signed as well, and we'll have one of the ladies model that for you very soon.